My name is Nancy Miller, and I'm 75 years old. And let me tell you something, life can still surprise you even when your hair's gone silver and your bones creak louder than your front door. But that day, the day I walked into the courtroom and the judge's face turned pale, that day, even I didn't know just how far my story had come. Let me take you back. I raised my son, Daniel, alone after his father passed when he was barely 6. We didn't have much, but I worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices by night and managing a tiny local bakery by day. Every dollar I saved, every sleepless night, was for Daniel's future. I bought our house when he was 12, an old Victorian-style home that needed more fixing than love. But it was ours. I used to tell him, one day, when I'm gone, this house will be yours, Danny. But remember, a home isn't about walls. It's about respect. He used to nod and hug me. Back then, he was my sweet boy. Fast forward 40 years. Daniel got married to a woman named Lydia, a woman who smiled with her mouth but never with her eyes. She was beautiful, sharp-tongued, and obsessed with money, my son's money, to be precise. At first, she pretended to like me. Brought me flowers, called me mom, even cooked Sunday dinners. But after their second anniversary, the mask started slipping. She'd roll her eyes when I spoke. She'd say things like, "Nancy, you should think about downsizing, this house is too big for you now." It was subtle at first. But I started feeling like a guest in my own home. Then came the real blow. One evening Daniel came by with Lydia, both sitting stiff on my couch. I could tell they were rehearsing something. "Mom," Daniel said carefully, "we've been thinking. It's time you transferred the house to my name. That way, I'll be safe if anything happens." I frowned. Safe? It's already safe. It's paid off. Lydia leaned forward, her tone sweet as honey but sharp as glass. "You're getting older, Nancy. What if you forget to pay taxes? Or, God forbid, fall and can't take care of it? We'd just be helping you." I laughed. Helping me by taking my name off my own house? But Daniel looked away. He couldn't meet my eyes. And that's when I knew. My son, my only son, had been poisoned by greed. A few weeks later, Daniel showed up again, this time alone. He said, "Mom, I talked to a lawyer. It's just paperwork. You'll still live here. It's just a safety transfer." I wanted to trust him. So, I signed. It wasn't until months later, when a notice of property reassignment arrived in the mail, that I realized what I'd done. I had given him full ownership. The house wasn't mine anymore. When I confronted him, Lydia smirked. "Well, you wanted family to have it, didn't you?" I tried to reason with them, but they'd already made up their minds. 2 weeks later, they told me they were remodeling and that I'd need to move out for a while. That while turned into forever. They changed the locks. I came back one evening with my key, and it didn't fit. My photos, my furniture, gone. My rose garden? Uprooted. I stood in the rain, staring at that house, and realized I had nowhere to go. I spent that night in my car, holding on to the only thing I still had, the original purchase contract, yellowed and folded in my purse. And that's when something inside me snapped. They took my house. But they forgot who built it. I went quiet for months. Daniel thought I had gone to live with a friend, which was true, in part. I rented a tiny room from a kind widow named Martha. And in that quiet, I planned. You see, before I retired, I worked for a lawyer's office as a clerk. I knew paperwork, how to read fine print, how to file motions, how to use the system the right way. So, I began digging. I found out that Lydia and Daniel had taken a second mortgage on the house. They were drowning in debt, using the house I'd built as their lifeboat. Even worse, they had falsified my medical condition in the original transfer document, claiming I was mentally unfit at the time of signing. That made it fraud. And fraud is something courts don't forgive. I gathered every receipt, every photo, every letter that proved my ownership and mental clarity. I requested a certified medical statement from my doctor confirming that I was perfectly healthy when I signed. And then, I called an old friend, Charles, a retired attorney who had owed me a favor for years. "Nancy," he said when I told him everything, "this is serious. But I think we can make them regret it." We filed a civil suit for fraud and elder abuse. I didn't tell Daniel or Lydia. They found out when they were served. 3 weeks later, my phone rang. It was Daniel. "Mom, what the hell is this?" he shouted. "You're suing us? Over the house?" I said calmly, "It's not over the house, Daniel. It's over respect." He hung up. Lydia texted me an hour later. "You're making a mistake, old woman. We'll crush you in court." I smiled. Because what she didn't know was that I had recordings, little voice memos of her mocking me, talking about how they'd get rid of the old bat once the deed was done. Charles had told me, if they go low, we go legal. And that's exactly what we did. The courtroom smelled of old wood and cold justice. Daniel and Lydia sat across from me, dressed in expensive suits they probably couldn't afford. When I walked in, the room went silent. Even the judge, an old colleague of Charles, looked up and froze. He leaned forward and said, almost softly, "Mrs. Miller. Why are you here?" Because on paper, according to the false documents, I was supposed to be mentally incompetent. I wasn't even supposed to be aware enough to appear. I smiled and said, "Your Honor, I'm here to take back what's mine." The gasps in the courtroom were priceless. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Lydia's smug face slowly began to crack as Charles presented every shred of evidence, the fraudulent forms, the altered doctor's note, the voice recordings. At one point, the judge asked Lydia, "Did you call your mother-in-law an old fool too dumb to read legal text?" She stammered, I was joking." The judge leaned back. "Well, your joke might cost you a house." When my turn came to testify, I stood tall. I said, "I may be 75, Your Honor, but I am not weak. I worked 40 years for that house. Every brick has a piece of my heart in it. And they took it not out of need, but greed." Even the courtroom reporters had tears in their eyes. Daniel couldn't even look at me. For the first time, I saw shame, real, painful shame, on his face. After closing statements, the judge sighed. He looked at me and said, "Mrs. Miller, I've been on this bench 30 years. But I've never seen a 75-year-old woman walk in here and present a case with more grace and precision than a whole team of lawyers." Then he turned to Daniel and Lydia. "The deed transfer is hereby nullified. The property returns to Mrs. Miller. Additionally, this court finds sufficient evidence of fraud and elder exploitation. Restitution is to be paid immediately." Lydia gasped. Daniel whispered, "Mom, please." But I just stood up, thanked the judge, and walked out. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of my shoes on the marble floor. A month later, I moved back into my house. It needed repairs, the walls had been repainted in cold gray, the garden left to die. But I didn't cry. I planted new roses. Red ones, for power and rebirth. Then, something unexpected happened. Lydia's family business, which had guaranteed the mortgage, collapsed. Their debts mounted, and they lost their own home. I heard they were renting a small apartment now. Funny how karma moves, isn't it? Daniel came by one evening, looking tired and broken. He said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking." I looked at him for a long moment and said, "You forgot who you were, Danny. And who I am." I didn't slam the door. I just closed it quietly. Because revenge isn't about shouting. It's about peace, the kind that comes when justice is finally yours. A few weeks later, I received a letter from the courthouse. Inside was a handwritten note from the judge himself. It read, Mrs. Miller, you reminded me why I became a judge, to see justice served, not just laws followed. You didn't just win a case. You restored faith and truth. I smiled and tucked it into my family Bible. But the story didn't end there. A year later, I received a call from Charles. Nancy, he said, remember the mortgage Lydia took out under your name? The bank is filing criminal charges, identity fraud. They're asking if you'd like to testify. I thought for a long time. Then I said, no. Let the law do what it must. I've already won. But karma wasn't done with them. Lydia was sentenced to 18 months for falsifying legal documents. Daniel got probation for aiding her. The last time I saw them was through the courtroom glass, the same room where I once stood trembling. This time, they were the ones being judged. These days, I sit on my porch, sipping tea, watching the sunset reflect on the old oak tree Daniel once climbed as a boy. Sometimes, the wind carries faint echoes of the past, laughter, promises, love. But I don't feel pain anymore. I feel proud. Because life may have tried to break me, but I stood tall, cane and all, and faced it. And when I walked into that courtroom, the judge may have been shocked. But he wasn't half as shocked as my son when he realized. His 75-year-old mother had outsmarted them all. Never underestimate the quiet ones, especially the old woman who once taught you everything you know, because she's the one who knows what you've forgotten. That love is patient. But justice has a long memory.